All right, we are live with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast. As you can see here, it's me, and then I got a special guest, Joey, host of the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast, I guess co-host technically. Yeah, so obviously Dan isn't here with me anymore, so it's a one-man show, but I'm going to bring in more guests and still crank out the content for everybody. So Joey, how you doing? How's your Thursday night treating you? You cracking open a beer over there?
I'm not cracking open any beers. My Thursday night's been good. I haven't done much. My wife is at her ceramics pottery class, whatever she does with her girlfriends there. So, I'm happy to be here, man. I'm glad that at least someone is committed to the success of Green Candle. Although I wish it wasn't just you and me. There was a third guy who was committed, and like you said, he's committed no longer. So
Sad but true. Well, you are the first guest on. No, I guess second guest. We had Cedric Youngelman.
oh, fuck
So
yeah,
you are.
fucking said beat me to it.
Yeah. You're the second guest, I guess. First solo guest with just me. So I don't know what you got to take for that, but that's good for something in my book at least.
I think so. I'm ready. I'm ready to perform here.
All right, let's do it. All right, Joey. So tell us a little bit about yourself in the Bitcoin space. Obviously, me and you connected through Twitter and your Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. Obviously, I think it's one of the more underrated podcasts out there. So if anybody hasn't checked it out yet, please do. They got a big deep dive on a bunch of mining, mining CEOs and everything like that. So great content there. But how did you get into Bitcoin up there in Canada where nothing's going on? And yeah, so dive right in.
It was me and Len who worked together at the same building. This was like 5 years ago now, I guess, 2017. And I was talking with another friend of mine about Bitcoin over the probably year leading up to that run to 20K. We didn't buy any. We didn't know anything about like how to get it, whatever. And so I ended up seeing a tweet in my timeline from a guy who was friends with a girl I dated years prior. Nice guy. And he was tweeting about Bitcoin. So I DM'd him. I was like, dude, what do you used to buy? And he's telling me about Coinbase. So I'm like, all right, like I'll get Coinbase, I guess. We get the app. We start buying. We could only buy at the time. You're going to shit when you hear this. We can only buy $50 a week if we had a Coinbase account. Yeah. And so, we were trying to buy like that $50, trying to max out. And it like, you can't get a good stack going on $50 a week. So we're doing this or whatever. And then after a month or a month and a half, it was up to like $100 a week. And then as you like built trust or whatever, it would just keep going up. The problem is that when we're like doing these buys or whatever, the price was running to 20K. It was like late 2017. We were hype. And when the price started to drop, like a day after that, maybe, or not even a day after that, we couldn't sell. Coinbase wouldn't let Canadians sell. So we had to hang on to all the Bitcoin we had, right? And so whatever, we did that, and we stuck it out through the 2017 bear market. Len and I and our buddy at work and a few other people we knew. And I was trying to get these guys probably starting in 2019 to start a podcast about it because I'd done some other podcasts, and I realized like how easy it is to do content, especially audio. And I was, busting chops at work, busting chops with my buddies, and no one wanted to do it. And then Len was finally like, if you want to do it and you don't mind me as a co-host, like, I'll do it. I said, for sure, let's do it. A couple of days later, he was at my house, and off you go, man. That's the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast story, the Bitcoin story. And I mean, you guys, you're probably in the same boat. You started around the same time as me, or maybe a year or two later. You got to feel like it's just getting started. Bitcoin, the content, you got to feel like it's all great stuff looking forward.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, I kind of have a similar story to you, but I was, hearing about Bitcoin. I heard about the run up and everything like that. I was in grad school with like no money basically. So I was driving Uber, and the place I bought it on was Robinhood. So I mean, I was a little worse than you. At least you were on Coinbase where you could pull it off. Like me, I was on Robinhood, and I bought Bitcoin and Dogecoin. So
oh, fuck,
if I would have held on to that Doge,
is it too late to back out of this or no? I got to stick around.
I had no idea about anything. And then that's when I started to take the dive into the podcast and everything. So I heard Preston's podcast, and he had one with Plan B. and Saifedean, who you guys had on recently.
Mm-hmm.
And that just opened my eyes to everything. So I sold my Dogecoin then and just went all in on Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, it's been quite the journey since
Side
then.
story. Where is Plan B now? He's gone. He's completely evaporated from the space.
Is he really?
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
haven't seen
Obviously, that model is broken now. So what's that guy doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen him on Twitter in quite a bit, but I remember hearing interviews from him, and he basically said like, if we get into like somewhat of a bear market, he's gonna basically go like dark because everybody's gonna be coming at his neck. And I actually just looked at his Twitter. He's still tweeting, mostly retweets, but yeah, actually like all retweet. Oh no, he tweeted out a chart here or there, but I don't
Is that
know.
the
I
rainbow
mean,
pitchfork chart?
yeah, his his model is like definitely, I mean, it's got like a lower floor. I don't know. His like error bars are like 50K. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, he was right dead on for a little bit, so credit to him for that. But I mean, I think as we get farther along and more adoption occurs, there's less and less like on chain is going to be
No,
accurate.
and is he not talking really about, he's talking a lot about halvings and stuff in his model. And I just think like listen, I'm not like a big, efficient market or not efficient market hypothesis guy. I'm just saying if everyone knows something's going to happen, then it doesn't happen. Like that's just the way nature works. Like this guy, he must know that. And I suspect that he's going to go dark after, not too much longer. So
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like in the next year or so, he's dark and who knows? I don't know. I mean, he started like a firm and everything too. So if some people start finding out like, who he is, he might have to dox himself. I don't know. I
it
mean,
ain't worth it, man.
yeah, not worth it. All right, well, let's get into it. Let's get into some of these stories. I mean, we had today the United States, the Fed, released their CPI report of 7.9% inflation year over year for the month of February. So that's a 40-year high, and it did not include items such as meat, fish, eggs, gas, electricity, and even including eating at home. So a lot of crazy stuff here. And then we also had the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, great lady, come in front of everybody and in front of cameras and say that the inflationary pressures have gone down month to month. Even though last month, wasn't it like 7% and now it's 7.9. But, the math doesn't really check out here. I'm not a math guy or anything like that, but I don't know. So tell me, how are you feeling about, I guess, like overall Bitcoin and overall, like, inflation? Because generally people kind of view Bitcoin as like an inflation hedge and whatnot. I don't know. I feel like the case for Bitcoin is stronger now than ever. But what are your thoughts on this CPI print?
I think you're 100% right. I think that I think a couple things about this. So you were good enough to send me the CPI line by line here. Len is in the chat asking us to do a breakdown. We don't have that kind of time, and I'm not interested in talking about these fudge numbers line by line. But the interesting thing about CPI, and I think that we talk about this on our show too, and you guys have talked about it. We've talked about it many times in our group chat. Like everyone's starting to realize this stuff is bullshit. Right. That's the problem that these guys are having now. So, we can talk about how maybe it wasn't so egregiously fudge like 20, 30, 40 years ago, like in the 80s. But like, what do you really think it wasn't? Am I alone? And you know what I mean? It was. The problem is there was no Twitter and no memes. Right. And so now I think personally, there was a missed opportunity the last couple of days with the CPI thing, because I think that every time the CPI print comes out now, we should tweet pictures of like, whatever the female statesman emoji is, and then the two fists side by side for Pelosi, like this at the because I think that's basically the only people who are excited about these numbers who think they're legit. I would also note that the White House is in the middle of a war posture with Ukraine and Russia and all this stuff going on in Europe, and still our favorite press secretary has time to film these well-edited Hollywood quality videos about like what inflation is, why gas prices are higher. Does she think no one knows this? And then Biden today, like the Biden Twitter account, whatever the marionette handler there is, he's got the fucking sticks on top of him. He's tweeting out oh, the war is what's causing the gas prices to be. The numbers are pre-invasion, man. Next month is when you're gonna see the numbers for the invasion. So when these guys are talking about this stuff, it's the core of the problem is the same thing. Either they are stupid or they are lying. And I think it's the second one. And worse, the target audience for that is really the average voter. What does that tell you about what the average voter knows and thinks? It doesn't say much for them, does it? And I look at like the feedback in the comments to the Biden tweets and the Psaki tweets, and it's all like, oh, you guys are just, it's just golf claps and emojis and like, guys, gas is going to be $10 a gallon over there inside of 2 months. And they're going to blame it on Putin. I'm not saying it has nothing to do with the Russian war. Of course it does. But it's the straw that broke the camel's back. These guys are at the same time when inflation is running hot talking about, what's that omnibus bill that they just passed or made it through 2,700 pages? Who read that? No one read that. You can't tell me that these guys are so engaged. Like they're like the Adderall consumption on the Hill is so out of control that these geriatrics have time to decide what the next move is in a hot war in Europe with a nuclear power on the continent, and also read a 2,700 page, something $1 trillion. It's so obviously bullshit. And these numbers really, like, they tell the whole story. And you didn't even mention owner's equivalent rent, which is the biggest travesty in all this stuff. Not only does that number not include housing and food that actually is like good for you, but owner's equivalent rent is a bullshit metric. It's what people who don't own homes think the homes are worth, and they get that number from people who do own homes talking about what they would rent it for. Why don't you just use the price of the homes? The price of the homes is available. The reason they don't use it is because it's a ridiculous farce. And they know that what they're doing is dishonest, but that's how you get to where you are now. That's how you get to, Biden, his State of the Union there claps every 20 seconds for stuff that has no real meaning. And now these numbers and gas prices, home prices, student loans on hold. I can go on and on. It's messy, man. And it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're nailing it right on the head there. I mean, down here in Tampa, I've had gas prices go up by 37 cents in one day. And that's just, astronomical when you got like 14, 15 gallon tanks, people driving pickup trucks or something like that. Obviously that cuts in the cost of food, that cuts in the cost of everything. And then I'm even seeing like local businesses around here say, have signs back behind them. You go up to the register like, hey, sorry, our menu prices are increasing because of inflation due to COVID-19. So they're not even realizing like it's all this stuff, and people are kind of eating it up. And it's like, how are you not gonna wake up when exactly what you said? It's the month of February. There was no invasion, and you're blaming this war where it's going on right now, and it wasn't going on during the month of February.
There's not much you can say, man.
I know. It's just like, it's a people just believing everything they hear and see. And, soon enough, I think people are going to start waking up. I also think too, like, when you look at these comments on Twitter and everything like that, like how true are they? Like, cause I feel like everybody that I talk to, like you guys and, we got that group chat with, Gandalf and everybody who does the Friday spaces with us. I feel like it's not like necessarily an echo chamber where we're all saying the same things. We all see some crazy shit on Twitter, but at the same time, it's like majority of people that I see and that I follow feel the same way, and they're going off on these people. And then you go down and you scroll down, and it's like just all positive replies. Like,
It's
are
unbelievable.
they like muting or blocking like the tough replies and just showing all the positives? I don't really know. I mean, we could get down the weeds of the conspiracy theory and everything like that too, but another big part of it too is like a policy change. We went from the United States being more dependent on itself under the last regime, and then now becoming more dependent on foreign policy and everything else. And you're seeing the effects of that, and then they're going to blame Putin and Russia. Like, the United States got to look in the mirror at some point in time. But you're right too. It's not only that, the foreign policy and the money printing. I mean, inflation was bad before this. Gas was going up before this. It was pushing on $3 a gallon before. and now it's going to be pushing on $4 a gallon where I'm at. And I've seen places where it's like I Am Legend type of things at like 650. So luckily I don't live anywhere like that, but yeah, it's getting wild out there, and I don't really see it slowing down. And I think we're both here because we believe the set amount of Bitcoin is the solution, or at least a solution better than we have right now, because the way we're going, everything's getting more and more expensive, and the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. My house, luckily I bought one at early on during this pandemic, but it's gone up. Like I wouldn't be able to afford the house I bought a year and a half ago right now, just because of how much it's gone up, and it's insane. So
Do you think they're going to raise next week?
I don't think so. I mean,
They
I already
can't,
think
right?
that,
Like what? Like
no.
what? It's got to be 25 basis points if they do it. But how can you, with all this other stuff going on, how can you say that you're gonna raise into this insane like economic down like that? It's a war downturn. It's a wartime downturn. And Bloomberg has that piece out today. Like whatever, it's in the opinion section, but I don't know what news qualifies as fact and opinion anymore on these these
Exactly.
mediums. Yeah, and so like they got an opinion piece out there, and it's like, well, the Fed's job has never been more difficult, but also never been as straightforward. Do not raise. Like what do you mean? And then on top of that, like, okay, so to the Bitcoin thing, I look at like Amazon yesterday and today, and the, again, like to the point that we made earlier about sort of this like voter, this average American voter or Canadian voter, whoever, there's a tech sell-off right now, a pretty broad tech sell-off. Amazon's down from like a high of 3,500 down to like 27 and change yesterday. And then they announce that they're doing a 20-1 split, and 20-1 splits, it doesn't mean anything. Okay. I don't know why why does a stock split mean anything to the stock? It doesn't mean anything to the value of the company. It doesn't mean anything. All it means is they're lowering the share price and giving you, presumably down the road, hopefully a little bit more in your pocket. But the price of Amazon jumped like 6% today on that news. I don't want to be invested in stuff where I'm at the mercy of people who are pulling these levers with like these shell games about company valuations and like issued equity, deciding whether or not I can buy a house, retire at a certain time, whatever. And then on top of that, the Bitcoin thing, like, man, you and me are we're a little apart in age, but we're the same demo. If you were 21 right now, how would you be acting? Like I was saying this to Len a little while ago, or maybe to my dad, I forget, but like we're talking about how when I was 21, I was into a lot of stupid shit. Okay. I was partying way too much. I probably spent all my time either drinking or working out for like 3 years. Okay. And even at that time, I realized that I had to save some money because at some point I can't just drink and work out. I got to like settle down, because I knew that if I did the right things for a few years, I'd be able to get a house, get a job, all this stuff that would make sense for me and I could live. But if you're 20 now, do you think you can do any of that stuff?
No chance. I mean,
so
like,
what are you going to do for 5 years then, Brandon? You're going to, at 20 years old, are you just going to get lit for till you're 30 and then like sit on the couch and doom scroll and watch Wojak movies on YouTube? Like that's your life. It's going to change people's behavior, and it's not quite there yet, but it's fucking close, man. Dogecoin and the speculative shitcoins and like GameStop, that's just the beginning of this like behavioral trend. It's going to get worse.
Well, it's because people got to find a get rich quick scheme, right? Because like if they don't, the 20% or whatever you're getting back from the S&P 500 just doesn't cut it. Because like I mean, like housing's going up by more than 20% in desirable places to live. So either you're going to have somebody like, okay, I'm going to save now and then I'm going to buy a house like 45 minutes to an hour outside of a city in the way out burbs where I don't want to live, and that's where I'm going to, raise my wife and kid, or, have my wife
raising my wife out here.
Yeah. I mean, do all that kind of stuff. And then, and then like, they're just going to have a bunch of roommates. Like I have friends here in Tampa that rent has gone up by $400 to $600 a month to where a place I used to live. And, I mean, I was like a 1-bedroom apartment. Like it's not even downtown. It's in like a desirable place to live. You can walk a lot of places, but downtown, and it's Tampa. It's not like it's Miami, New York, Chicago, all these other bigger cities. And it's crazy. They're all having to move in with each other and get roommates and move farther outside the city and everything like that already right now. And they're just thinking like, okay, I'm not going to buy a house. Like it's just not obtainable, and that's their mindset right now. So what are they going to
Do you
do?
think
Like,
there's going to be like is there going to be like a reckoning of all these Bitcoiners who are like LARPing as homesteaders, pretending they're going to move out to like 40-acre farms? Like, you guys don't know how to fucking run a 40-acre farm. You can't just take pictures by a stream and tell people you're homesteading. That ain't homesteading, man. Eventually it's going to get cold. There's going to be a storm or something. Your wife's going to get tired of fucking knitting or whatever the fuck you do in the middle of nowhere. All this stuff matters. And people, like, there's a reason that communities form in suburbs, right? It's where the amenities are. It's where schools are. It's where people find value day to day. And I'm not saying that there's not some element of fiat there. Of course there is. Like, I don't need to live near a movie theater in a mall, but living near like a good school with a bunch of other people who are of similar mind is a good idea. There's value in that. There's going to be this switch flipped, I think, in the next 5 years or 3 years, where all these guys who made a bunch of money on Bitcoin from 2017 are like realizing, oh yeah, it turns out that the Amish actually have practice at doing this and I don't. Or it turns out that like the YouTube video that instructs you on how to like kill and strip a pig of edible pork isn't that easy to follow because I drove out here in a Tesla and I went to an Ivy League school. Like, it's not the same, man. And so all these things are going to be, it's all going to come home to roost at some point. I don't know when, but that's why I'm not moving out to a farm anytime soon. Like, I'll pass, man.
You're not going to Liver King it?
Just give me like a couple of acres where like my dog can run around. But no, I'm not going to Liver King it. Although that guy is absolutely deezed, man. He's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a video too recently. He's like walking through a sled, like with a sled, no shirt on, and everything like that through the middle of Times Square in New York City. So I mean, I don't know, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you there 100%. It's like all these. I see a lot of Bitcoiners are like, all right, well, I'm gonna go dark and all this and that, and at the end of the day, I just don't think that's feasible. At least from my perspective, it's like, well. I'm stacking Bitcoin here, and hopefully, maybe I buy other things like a rental property or something, or this podcast takes off, and I could keep earning Bitcoin and not have to work in the fiat world anymore. But we'll see. So if anybody wants to sponsor this pod, we're definitely looking. So
available.
Yeah, hit me up. That's a one-man show. I'm working hard out here. All right, so let's move on to the next story that I got for you. I don't know if you've seen this, up in the depths of Canada, but the United States released the executive order on crypto. So from my opinion here, it's basically a nothing burger. Biden signed a executive order to approach regulation of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And essentially, it just said that the purpose was to set a strategy to protect consumers, provide financial stability, assess national security, and address climate risks. So I know you love the ESG narrative and everything like that, but I mean, it's just it was an executive order to set strategy. Like, what the hell does that even mean? So, like, as a Canadian who loves ESG, where's your perspective on that?
I honestly don't know what to say about the EO. I know people are talking on Twitter about how, well, it's going to grant legitimacy to the space and it's going to like increase the number of normies who come on board. If you don't think it's legit already, do you really think like the executive order from like Grandpa Joe is going to be the thing that puts you over the top? Am I dreaming that? Like, am I the only one who thinks that you should already think it's okay? So if it's not legit now, like that order is not going to do it. One. The ESG thing as an attack vector, I think remains a more serious threat than some of the miners will let on. And that includes some of the miners we've had on our show, who, as you guys have pointed out, seem to be getting their ducks in a row as far as the explanation for why they view ESG as a positive or an opportunity. I think they're being honest that they view it that way, but I think that they're not looking at the right stuff because governments aren't in the business of like giving away, like monetary control And so if they have an ESG angle to attack a miner with, or some other service provider, they're going to do it. And it's not going to be the first time that they use, sort of an off the beaten path attack angle. This probably wouldn't even qualify as off the beaten path. I think it's pretty commonly understood to be an attack vector for Bitcoin. So I guess the question I have for you is, what is the mood over there as far as the executive order in a place like Florida or Texas, I guess would be even a better example, where they're very clearly crypto friendly and they're very clearly anti-federal government. What do those states care about an executive order? What's the mood like?
I mean, I think down here it's just like the executive order was just nothing. It was a lot of hyped up, and people were kind of anticipating it, thinking that I'm sure you saw on Bitcoin Twitter, everybody's get your Bitcoin off the exchanges. They were thinking that the worst was going to happen. Things were going to get more regulated. But I think it's just like too big of a market in the United States now. Too many people are working on it. There's so many jobs. You got FTX Arena at the Miami Heat. You got Crypto.com Arena in the formerly the Staples Center for the Lakers. Like, it's just too much ingrained in the American culture for them to like really shut it down. And you're seeing a lot of politicians and states like kind of get involved into Bitcoin. You see Illinois, Georgia trying to become mining friendly. Obviously Texas, North Dakota, Florida, Tennessee, like a lot of these, like Wyoming, a lot of these other states already becoming Bitcoin friendly. Yeah, I think
that number is growing, is it not? Like, that number's not shrinking. That number's growing.
100%. Yeah. And every single politician is realizing, hey, if I give a Bitcoin angle, that could potentially get me more votes, and it'll get you more popularity. And, some Bitcoiners are eating that shit up. And me personally, I'm more skeptical on it. I know we've had that conversation, in our spaces and things like that. But, I mean, at the same time, some of them are rehearsed, and some of them you can tell understand the Bitcoin ethos, and others don't. They see that they promote the freedom of Bitcoin and everything like that, and then they go into the mask mandates and everything like that too. So it just doesn't really fit both sides of the coin. But hey, they're for Bitcoin, so vote for them. Allegedly, right?
These guys don't know anything about it, right? And like, I look at like Eric Adams in New York City, best example of this. That this guy ran on a platform of Bitcoin friendly. We're going to make this a Bitcoin friendly city, Bitcoin friendly administration. The guy gets elected, okay, in what I would call like a landslide for a city like New York, where there's a lot of strong candidates. He gets elected in a landslide, and what happens? He goes immediately to this position of, well, I'm pro Bitcoin but anti Bitcoin mining. That's an immediate, like, one step forward, 30 steps back. This guy's a lost cause, and it's not surprising that in a man, I'll look for some diplomatic language here just in case this video hits. But like, there's a certain ideology that's been prevalent in New York for a long time that has turned it into the whole that it's becoming. You see the same thing in places like San Francisco, of course, and other blue cities. Whether you agree or disagree, I guess, is up to you. But I would argue that you're seeing that more and more in blue cities than you do in red. You elect a guy like that, and again, Brandon, it tells you something about the people in the city. And so you can like or dislike, Floridians, right? There's the Florida man meme, for example, that's been, hot for years. I love that meme. Okay. It's true that there's a lot of people in Florida who are a little bit off kilter, off their rocker. But the fact of the matter is, Florida also has a lot of people who seem to understand what's going on in other places, other jurisdictions and regions, and they don't want anything to do with it. And guess what? That Florida man meme is getting harder and harder to sell to the broader public because people want to go to Florida. Okay. AOC, great example. Oh, we got to have the COVID measures. We got to come down hard. Florida's killing people. What the fuck is she doing on her vacation? She goes up there with her vegan boyfriend and dances it up at some club, no mask. And it's just like an obvious grift from politicians like this. And the other thing I would just mention is how many, like, this is like obviously a bit of a, it's not an irrelevant point, but it's something to consider, even just in jest. How many of those politicians voting on something like crypto regulation? Okay. Think of Gensler and his look at the SEC. Think of Congress, all these guys, the White House, the West Wing. Like, how many of these guys have ever downloaded a song on LimeWire? How many have downloaded a song on iTunes? How many have torrented something? How many can send an e-transfer to somebody? I think you guys have a different name for that, but like send cash from your bank account to someone else's bank account via email. How many can do it? How many? The answer is probably close to none. It's close to none. You could honestly pick a random sample of like 40 to 70-year-olds or 50 to 70-year-olds from the general population in America across political divides, regional divides, whatever, and get more people who knew how to do that stuff than you could with the same random sample of 50 to 70-year-olds in elected office. That's a scary thing these days because all this stuff is coming so fast and coming downhill that it's like the expanding universe, right? It's happening too fast. You're never going to catch up now. So what's the plan for these guys, right? It's cricket hands. It's ripping up State of the Union addresses. Good. That's the bed you want to live in. Fine. But people like, Florida, Texas, you mentioned a bunch, Wyoming, Dakota, these guys want to get it right. And they see, I think also, I want to hear your thoughts on this because you're the American. I think they see also a chance to, to get some blood in the water for people that have really, rubbed them the wrong way for a long time. They haven't been able to do it. They haven't been in a position of power, but they are now. And I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess on your points of the states, the blue and red cities and things like that, I think the American people as a whole have been sort of voting with their legs recently, especially with the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. We've seen mass exodus from places like San Francisco, New York, coming down to Florida. And although the media and other people kind of portray Florida and all these places, the Florida man meme and everything like that, they get a negative portrayal in the press, and some people actually believe it. Some of my friends in Austin, where I grew up, are telling me they won't come to Florida during the pandemic because of X, Y, and Z. Their parents would look bad at them, or they don't want to catch COVID, even though Texas had similar regulations and laws as Florida, but Texas can do it right and Florida can't. So, I mean, it's just, like I said, it's like the negative press that people just end up believing. And it's like we were saying earlier, where they're going to believe this year over year inflation number where it's, and the press is going to blame it on the Ukrainian war, when at the end of the day, it was before the Ukrainian war. And it's the same kind of deal with that. So they're going to just keep believing and, I guess, keep going with the narrative that Florida is like a shitty place, which, I mean, I live here and I love it. So if you don't want to live here or come here, then you can fuck right off. So, so
listen, I'm taking some heat on Twitter from a guy who I follow and like, he listens to our show. It's about this homesteading thing. I'm not saying that every Bitcoiner is LARPing, but I'm saying like 75% of Bitcoiners are really LARPing about this living off the land thing and buying acreage. I cannot do it. I'm never going to do it. I don't know if you're planning on doing it, Brandon, but like, yeah, you're not. I think that a lot of people can do it, but I think that more than half or more than 50 or 60%, whatever the number is, on Bitcoin Twitter, who are like, I'm going to buy acreage, I'm going to Citadel, I'm going to do this. You're not going to do it. And that's fine. That's the sort of trendy thing. It's fine to be passionate about it, but don't kid yourself. Much the same way as, if you want to move to a state that you think you like more, it may be more difficult than you're anticipating. Just be ready for that. Maybe take that step first before you Citadel. I don't think, I can't raise a barn. Like I said, man, I don't know how to do that. So I'm not going to be learning anytime soon either.
Yeah. I mean, my family's from Chicago, man. I'm a city boy. I'm not going to
Chirac.
Yeah. I'm not going to go out and go hunting. I've been hunting 3 times. I've been fishing like 2 or 3 times. Fun to me. And I'm not going to be like going to the grocery store, being able to buy my stuff. And I can cook it all right, but I'm not. I enjoy the city life. I enjoy being around people and conversating and things like. I really don't see my. Maybe some other people will do it. I know my former co-host Dan couldn't hang in Florida, so. If you guys saw him like on day 2 or 3 at the Bitcoin and blockchain conference, he was hurting pretty bad because he just can't hang out here. And so, I mean, some people are built for it and some people aren't. I'm obviously built different, and I think we're all good. But yeah, I mean, I like we were saying, I think people in the states are voting with their legs and going to places that are more desirable. And at the end of the day, those states are generally more friendly to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ethos, as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's going to continue, and I think places like Florida and Texas and all the other states we were listing out earlier are just going to keep keeping an influx of people. And that's going to be good and bad, especially for the people that lives in those states, because those places and cities in those states are growing rapidly. And hopefully the policies that they have now that made them a desirable place to live kind of stay put. So that's the one thing that worries me, is that people that move from one place to another don't really realize, like, the policies in this place that I moved from were kind of the reason why it became a shithole. But so hopefully people critically think just a little bit, because that's lacking. But time will tell with that.
Gonna find out.
Yeah. Well, now let's move. We'll move away from the United States. We'll go to a both not from. We'll go to Europe. So the city of Lugano, it's a Swiss city, has made legal tender. So it wasn't just Bitcoin. They made Bitcoin Tether, and then an LPA stable coin, which is approximate value of 1/100th of a cent. So they made it a live announcement. They called the city of Lugano Europe's Plan B, and both of the city and the CEO of Tether went up there, and they raved about the El Salvador and President Bukele over there, or Big Balls Bukele, as we call him here on this podcast. Um, how he's like been a great mentor to them, to benefits. They've seen El Salvador grow at a rapid rate. Even making like a vet animal hospital and things like that, because of the adoption of Bitcoin. What do you think? I mean, it's just one city, but do you kind of see this trend to kind of start to increase, or is this just kind of a one-off thing in your opinion?
I think it's one off. And I hate to say that, because I think it's a, potentially, again, like the snowball is rolling downhill. The question is how big the snowball can get with stuff like this. I don't know much about Lugano. I do know that Europe is much more collectivist in its approach to monetary policy than somewhere like the United States is, obviously, clearly these days. And so I guess I'll kick it back to you. What makes you think this is like a super bullish story? Because if you think it's super bullish, you must think that there's potential for this to spread to other regions nearby, at the same time when Europe is basically under more stress than it's been in the last what's the number, 50 years, something like that, right? You got like I said, a land war with a nuclear power now on continental Europe. What do you think the issue is? Like, is that like a thing that's going to spread, or is it just going to halt with Lugano? Also, like, why can't we get like a major sort of metropolis city? Like, we have to get Lugano. Why can't we get like, another city? I don't know any European cities, obviously. I got in a little too far there. So
Yeah. Well, no, I think Lugano is like known as being like a big tech friendly city. They're basically doing it to attract business, attract startups and things like that. And so this is kind of their first step. So I do think it's maybe like a first step. I could see Finland, like, down the road eventually. Oh man, Dan says we're getting a bad echo, so hopefully we're not.
It's not an echo. It's I think, I don't know if my voice is skipping too. Your voice is skipping a little bit.
Damn, that internet connection. Hopefully, a low budget operation here. But I guess we'll keep ripping and rolling, and hopefully it comes out good at the end. But yeah, I mean, Lugano's been a tech friendly city. They're doing it to do attract businesses, attract startups, and things like that. And I think, once it's similar to the El Salvador situation, right? So El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, seeing other Latin American countries like Mexico, Brazil, Argentina start to get involved into the Bitcoin space. And I think that's just a matter of time in Europe. They'll see the success on Lugano, and then, more cities will adopt it, or more countries. Maybe, it's going to be smaller set, definitely first, and then, the larger cities will kind of follow suit because these have the most to lose, in my opinion. So it's kind of similar to, like how I view countries adopting it. Yeah, El Salvador is a very small third world country,
Yeah.
with is impoverished. Like, what do they have to lose to do it? They have they're being run by the United States government, or the United States Fed, with their currency, and have no control over it or anything like that. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's the same way with the city. They're gonna test it out, and if it were well, then will more and more of these cities kind of adopt. So I don't think it's like a nothing burger. I think it's like a small story. But it's kind of, other than like the CPI, the executive order in the United States. I think it was kind of a slower news week, in my opinion.
Don't you think that the reason El Salvador works so well is because there's like a nice mix? And I'm gonna pump my own bag here a little bit. Like we had Jaime Garcia on, who's a Canadian who does a lot of work with the El Salvadorian Bitcoin community, and we posited to him that the reason it works so well is because there's sort of a young and not hopeless, but looking for change population over there. And on top of that, there's obvious currency weakness, right? You got basically a currency that's on the decline and a country that's on the decline, and so Bitcoin there has a better chance of taking hold than it does in a place that's if not in the eurozone, probably has a currency that's not hyperinflating away, right? And so I just wonder if it's going to stick for them the same way it did for El Salvador. Maybe you're right though. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think, time will tell. It'll be based on like the success of this city, the success of Bitcoin, Tether, and I think like they have like a lot of the CEO of Tether's, out there pouring a bunch of money. They're having a fundraise too for startups, specifically around the crypto space there as well. And I think that they're hosting a big, maybe it's a World Bitcoin coin.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are going to start coming there, and I think it's just like, it's more of like a publicity thing too at the end of the day, because El Salvador, for what it's worth, although I think Bitcoin has helped them, I think it's also given them a lot more publicity, and people have gone out, and I think their travel industry and everything like that has increased as well too. So a lot of people in the Bitcoin space have been coming down there and things like that. So I think it's like, two sides of it. There's the benefits of implementing the currency, and then there's also the benefits of the publicity too. So I think it's just kind of like a matter of time until more of these places see that, hey, if we become an early adopter, more and more of these Bitcoiners, whether you see it as like a cult or what, these Bitcoiners come in and visit this place. So yeah,
Are we going to El Salvador next year? Once my Achilles heals, I'm going on all manner of trips to all manner of countries. I got to start going. I got to start going.
On for sure. I actually got to renew my sport. I realized that it's expiring like in the next like month or so, and that's great. So it's gotta. I don't know. Maybe I have to get a jab or two or something new. Who knows?
There goes all the advertising reps. It's gone.
All right, I'll bleep that out. But all right, the next, so we got I went a little European heavy on the end here. But there's two that I kind of wanted to highlight. One is about FTX. So I kind of brought that here about the Miami Heat sponsor stadium there. The main sponsor, which actually just announced their deal today. So there's actually going to be baseball this year, and as a big baseball guy, big Cubs fan, and I'm excited. But FTX is now going to go in Europe. And so I think that's big as one of the bigger exchanges here in the United States. But on the flip side of things, crypto exchange have been forced to block Russian users. So like we were saying earlier, it's like the Bitcoin ethos is more like freedom money and things like that. Transactions no matter where you are, not really blocking anything, and kind of having we're kind of having the opposite effect in Russia, and the negative effects of a country almost being canceled at this point out there. So although the Russian people didn't necessarily go to war with Ukraine. It was more so, their ruler and everything like that forcing it. The Russian people are kind of suffering from it. So, first, what do you think? FTX being launched in Europe, and then the crypto exchanges kind of being forced to block all Russians out there.
FTX, I don't care about really. They're like whatever, great platform. Fine. They got some stadiums. They got some. I think were they sponsoring the umpires or something? I forget what.
Yeah, they have it on the umpires like chest.
Yeah, it's
They're like getting over the stadium.
So they got that. Fine. I care way more though about the Russian crypto exchange accounts being censored, and I really like. I haven't really had time to like formulate my thoughts about this in any coherent way, but I do feel strongly about it because that's a country that really needs, I think, the opportunities that Bitcoin and crypto present at the current moment. And I'm curious. Coinbase, Coinbase, for example, has been in the news the last couple of days on BT because these guys are saying that they now want 3 months of financial records and 3 months of tax, or like a tax return and stuff. Like, where'd you get your money from before you start buying Bitcoin and other coins? And I have a hard time reconciling that level of user KYC just starting to them knowing through some unknown, less than transparent means which Russian accounts they need to block because of suspicious activity. How do they know these things? And should they be being more transparent about this? I don't know. The other thing I would note is that, over the course of history, I can't think of a single time that a censor acted quickly and with the political winds of the moment and was viewed later as, a positive influence on the situation. I can think of many times where they weren't positive influences on a situation. And this is, shaping up, in my view, to be another example of a misfire. I guess the other thing to note is why now is it a problem? If you're just censoring Russian citizens anyway, they're not, most Russian citizens are not doing anything differently than they were 3 weeks ago. They're living in Russia under an oppressive rule. Why did you wait till now to do this? And it's not just Coinbase, right? Like you're seeing this in a lot of other places, including in Canada. I think in Montreal today, there's a prodigy piano player, young man in Montreal of Russian descent, who was removed from his, I don't know what you call it, his orchestral troupe or something. I don't know what you would call that, like gathering of musicians, but the guy was removed for no reason. And I just think, like, if we're doing this now, why did we wait? It's these people aren't doing anything differently, and they're like I said, they're at the mercy of this guy who's dictatorial in the worst sense of the word. So I don't like this at all. I have a real problem with this.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a lot of these exchanges too are going to start how much they could push the boundaries of KYC status. I was at a Bitcoin meetup at one point in an undisclosed city, and one of the guys up there was like, I think there's a difference between KYC for certain companies where KYC you get your data, and other companies do it to just because it's simply they have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I don't want to come up here and trash Coinbase because I think it helps a lot of people get into Bitcoin and get into crypto, which kind of, eventually will probably lead them to Bitcoin. But today, I think a giant company that has to focus on growth and satisfy their their investors and things like that. So they're going to need to get more data, and once they can get more data, they can sell that data or use it to figure out how that they can either target you or get you to put more money on the platform, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think a lot of these companies are, you're going to start to see it, and then there's also, I think, some external pressure from governments and SEC and other regulatory bodies. They're going to start being like, does this money come from for this person and things like that, and then they're going to start shutting it off. So, I'm really disappointed to see them torturing and making the Russian peoples kind of cutting them out when really it's they didn't do anything, right? I mean, just like you said, it's the dictator that decided to do this, and you're even seeing people in Canada and other places like it's, I'm sure that there's some, a little bit of tension towards Russian people as well down here. And so it's really disappointing, but at the end of the day, it's like, what did an average Russian citizen do? Probably nothing. So
Nothing.
they're getting the short end of the stick for sure. And yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Bitcoin ethos and anything like that is just to let people conduct their way as they will, and this is definitely not that. I'm not.
Ain't that?
Yeah, I'm definitely not about censorship. My last former co-host was definitely all about censorship and everything like that. So that's why he's not here anymore. But yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens to the rest of us, and obviously not to me because dog and my former co-host is a puppy. But so here we are with the exchanges blocking.
You're on like this is the second, I think I was listening to State of the Coin or maybe the Sunday Scaries. You're like in the sort of P Diddy post J-Lo era where like every song is pretty good, like it's a good tune, but there's always like a little bit of like I miss J-Lo in there. That might be where you are right now with your former co-host.
I don't miss him at all. I'm a one man show here, all right? I'm doing better than I ever did. I mean, check the content I'm putting out.
I'm pretty sure Puffy used to say that too. I'm better now than I've ever been.
I'm better than I've ever been. We're still here. All right. We're still here. But yeah, all right. Let's move on to the last two stories though. It's kind of along the same line in Europe. So Dubai and Iran are kind of creating some regulations surrounding Bitcoin and crypto. So Dubai kind of made its first like crypto laws. So having they originally had a summit, kind of like Lugano's doing, for venture capitalists to finance startups in January of this year. And now they've passed a Dubai virtual asset regulation law, and it's basically to create like legal framework to like similar to what the executive order by the United States said, to protect investors and provide international for virtual asset industry governance that will promote business growth. And there's a few other things in there. And at the end of the day, that they're businesses, if they go about this and they find out that something sketchy is going on or anything like that, they can fine them, and then they can revoke their business laws or their business license and things like that. So, what do you think about all this in Dubai? I don't know. I just kind of ran through a few things here, and I don't know if you're even aware of this story, as you're just up in that Arctic tundra where you live.
I had no idea about the story, but I'll tell you a couple things I think, because that's what I'm here for. So, Dubai, when they're talking about their whatever their process is akin to an executive order, as you mentioned there, to give some regulatory framework around digital assets to grow business. If they decide that Bitcoin is a good thing for their people in their country, do you think that they're going to tell their miners that they have to use 50% renewables to secure the network and get as many coins as they possibly can? Or do you think that they're not going to say that? What's your guess?
I'm not. It's tough.
You know what the answer is. The answer is they're not going to tell them to use renewables. They're going to figure out, as the sharks are circling the US dollar now. Okay, we've seen this already. There's this other axis of payments now between China, Russia, and India. These guys are, allegedly anyway, if again, I don't know what to believe that what I see on Twitter from the blue check mafia, but there's a clear pattern of behavior here from the OPEC nations. And the pattern of behavior is Vavangul, I'm not taking your calls. Okay. We're not talking about oil. We're not talking about output. We're not talking about shit. I'm dismembering your journalists. Go back to your house and don't come see me again until you got something that can help me line my pockets and feather my nest. That's where these guys are. Okay. If they decide Bitcoin's going to hit and they want to have some piece of that, there's going to be no question about how they're mining it. They're not going to say, well, we got to build wind turbines and, find the, the Dubai Greta to dictate energy policy to us. It ain't happening, man. These guys take winning seriously. And there's cost to that, of course, if you're a citizen. But as a country that's like, crippled by democracy's worst features, if you're an American Bitcoiner, this should be concerning to you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, more and more of these countries are starting to put regulations on there, and I think, like, as far as regulations go, they're never really, a good thing. They're going to be governments trying to negatively portray Bitcoin, negatively portray crypto, whatever you want to call it, and they try to poke holes in all the arguments. One of the first things that Dan and I did when we started our newsletter was debunk a bunch of FUD related to Bitcoin, and a lot of the stuff that we went through are stuff that we're seeing now. We went through like energy FUD, like will the government be able to stop it? Things like that, like that. It's sort of a never-ending cycle with Bitcoin, So I think it's just another thing. We're going through GFUD right now, and people are more concerned about it, just because they're buying into this whole like global warming thing and everything like that, and whatever you want to believe on, is obviously Bitcoin promotes energy. If you've listened to any intelligence and talk about Bitcoin and any knowledgeable person about it, like Jack Dorsey or Michael Saylor or anything, that they'll convince you within 1 second that this ESG shouldn't matter because as it using renewable energy and finding the reliable sources. And a lot of companies too, that like Great American Mining Company, and I'm sure a lot of these other mining companies in Canada places too, they use like flare offs from oil rigs and stuff like that. So energy that's being wasted is now being used to mine Bitcoin, and all these things they just beneficial in the end. And so I think at the end of the day, all these regulations just kind of give me a headache, and I just kind of like rub them off and go on to the next one. But speaking of the next one, Iran, it's kind of good, kind of bad. They banned Bitcoin mining for the past 4 months, but now they're allowing Bitcoin mining and mining for that matter. The ban was due to blackouts that began in December after more than 600 megawatts of energy was being used by illegal mining operations. So now that they're requiring get some mining licenses in order to do that, and that they will require farms to operate with renewable energy sources. So kind of like along the same lines, it's these countries kind of putting on Bitcoin and crypto mining because it's putting a little bit extra strain on the grid. But at the end of the day, they're getting back to mining. They're opening it back up. They didn't ban it completely like China did. So I think like you were saying before, like a lot of these countries are realizing, hey, like it's a big market. What are we gonna do? We're gonna just kick it out of here. Like we can't afford to do that. Yeah, at the end of the day,
they can't. Yeah. And like Iran, this is another point that Jaime Garcia brought up to us yesterday, and we talked to him. There's a huge Muslim community on this planet, and I understand there's some discussion in that community about whether Bitcoin is halal or haram. And so if Iran is allowing it, can we fairly say then that the Bitcoin ecosystem and the token itself is halal? I think we might be able to.
I mean, I don't see why not.
Very strict Muslim country, right? Like famously, regressive, taking all the sort of ancient texts to heart, as far as I understand it. So if they're allowing it, we can get like a 2 billion person boost in the network with all those DCAers coming from the Muslim community. That's one thing to take from this. Other thing, do you really think Iran has a power grid that allows for them to say, you have to use renewable energy to mine your Bitcoin? I very much doubt it. I think that's, a sort of a sneaky third world nation, unfortunately. So I doubt very much that they have the capacity there on the green side of their infrastructure build to say, yeah, you can mine Bitcoin for sure, but you just can't mine it with, our base load grid. You have to find some other way. I doubt that's the case. They may say that, but I doubt that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there too. I mean, we saw things like in the States too. We had Texas, who's very, very Bitcoin friendly, have their grid shut down because of inclement weather and a lot colder temperatures than they're used to this past year. So, um, and at the end of the day, they're like, hey, I think they actually used Bitcoin mining to kind of help to get the grid back on and warm everything up too. So, it's the FUD that we've been seeing for a while. It just is become more and more mainstream now because, uh, Bitcoin's becoming more mainstream. So, it's just another, flash in the pan, I think in my opinion, and just more of these countries figuring out, okay, this market is not going away. We can't ignore it right now. So we either have to regulate it or we get left behind. And it's kind of unfortunate, but it's been operating long on its own without any sort of relation that, and is doing just fine in my opinion. But
Yeah.
we've also seen like some of these companies too try to profit off of it with some of this shit coinery that we got going too. So I don't know. Maybe they're talking about it protecting the investor, and maybe they say to get rid of all the shit coins. Who knows what is actually gonna happen? But at the end of the day, like I said before, I just don't really trust politicians or trust all this stuff that is going on. We were talking about it in the earlier story where a lot of these politicians are telling you what you want to hear, and it's almost mainstream now, and you can kind of dice a little bit more on Twitter. But I think back to our parents' generation and everything like that, I think the general consensus was like politicians lie, but you can't really poke as many holes because not everything is as public. There's not as much access to information, and there's not a camera in somebody's face 24/7, 365, and so now the information's out there and this information spreading rapidly. I think the adoption is kind of coming a little quicker than I thought, in my opinion. And so, um, because of that, I think politicians are cut to it, and they're deciding to regulate more. So, for better or for worse, it's kind of happening at least over in Europe. So,
Starting, man. It's starting here. It's starting there. I heard Pish talking to Crypto Mags today, and there's some thought that as far as sort of regulatory hurdles and regulatory capture in America, that Grayscale is gearing up to take the SEC to court over the spot ETF. So that's the companies and the funds and the investors that want this thing are eventually beginning to become too numerous, right? Like the dam's going to break at some point. The question is, will the hodlers, make it through that next 3x or 4x price move? So I think that's coming, this year, next year. Well, we'll see. I'm ready either way. I'm not selling.
yeah, exactly. Me neither. And I think like even too that when the Grayscale Futures ETF, it was the largest debut of any ETF ever. So I mean, obviously investors are ready for it. In countries we have just as many investors on exchanges like Coinbase and other things like that. I know I did I did a piece at BTC Times where I was looking into the amount of people in Brazil who invest in the Brazilian stock market up to the crypto and coin markets, and it was the exact same number of how many people do that. And so I mean, it's like the same amount of people that are investing money there are realizing that it's open, and the younger demo too, especially in the United States, all over this stuff. I don't think you can go to somebody under probably the age of 40 that isn't gonna have some sort of opinion on crypto or Bitcoin. And yeah, I'm sure it's the same way up in Canada as well.
The demographics are in our favor. There's no one who's going to move of any age. There's no one who's going to go from Bitcoin to gold as their store of value investment. But there are people who are going to go from gold to Bitcoin, and there are gold bugs who are going to die out and give way to, the generation that will buy Bitcoin as their asset of choice. It's funny. Before, I don't know if is that the last story?
Yeah, that's the last story, but I kind of had one more thought too. But
give it to me, and then give it to me, and then I want to talk about the rates because Liam is in the chat from our channel, and he's got a comment about rates, and I know you'll have something to say about this too. So
yeah, for
go
sure.
hit me with your last thought.
Well, okay, so it was just kind of like we were talking about the younger demo, right? We're kind of having this tech as far as like globally, right? So we're having a rapid adoption of the internet, and then now computers, and now like digital, cryptocurrencies and things like that. And in the United States specifically, I'm not sure how it is, but you have to be a certain age in order to be the president of the United States, and you have to be, have a certain amount of experience to get to these levels. And I think in the older times, it was good because everything was kind of the same, and it wasn't moving quite as quickly as it is now. But now I feel very different about it. I think that it's definitely hindering the growth states, and that's the reason why a lot of these other countries, like we're seeing Russia, China, catch up to the United States, because we're having these leaders like Joe Biden, who's for all accounts, he's very old. It's Grandpa Joe, right? Is like one of his nicknames and things like that. And so, if you were gonna go and ask him what's an intelligent thing about Bitcoin, he's not gonna be able to give you a good answer, because he doesn't have the bandwidth, or he has too much other things to go on to sit down and really give it the time and the 10,000 hours or whatever it is to learn the technology. So I mean, my opinion is I think that we need to lower that as a country for the United States. I'm not sure how it is in Canada, but I think it would benefit to see not like a 25-year-old or anything like that, but somebody a little bit younger that has at least like grew up in the internet age, and has all these kind of things to kind of understand what goes at all these things. So I'm curious to what you think about that. And yeah, what all the regulations are up in Canada.
We don't have the same we don't have the same problem with the old leadership here. I think most of if I look across the provinces, most of the premiers are not so long in the tooth, not like Biden or Trump. I think Trudeau is 50, maybe something like that. So he was the same age maybe as Obama was when he was elected. I think Trudeau was 44 when he was elected. He's been the prime minister for 6 years or so. So, we don't have that problem. But I think the problem that most liberal, like first world liberal democracies share is one of sort of procedural latency, where by the time they see an issue come to the surface, right? Bitcoin, for example, shows up 3 or 4 years ago, really goes mainstream, and it becomes a political issue, a law issue, a legislation issue. And now here we are 5 years later, and there's an executive order that says we have to start studying this stuff. The thing is that the cat's already out of the bag. So you can't really steer the outcome here anymore. You either have to adapt or ban or something of that nature. It becomes very black and white. It becomes very binary, because there's no way now to harness this thing. The fire is out. The snowball is rolling downhill, like I said before. I think that's a problem in liberal democracies. I don't know what the fix is for that. I doubt very much that countries that are so proud of their traditions, Canada, the US, Britain, other European countries, like what are the odds they abandon their parliamentary tradition in favor of actually trying to pass laws in a realistic time frame that actually steer and harness the power of the things they're trying to get ahead of? It's never going to happen. And so in the sovereign individual, they make this case too, that no matter what governments do, the current sort of status and state of government action is beyond repair. It's got to be torn down and rebuilt. And the next question, I guess, even for the doom scrollers and the doom slingers is it going to be torn down by the people, or is it going to be torn down by governments for the people? In either case, it's going to happen. Bitcoin's a great example of this. Separating the state from money is, I think, really an arrow to the knee, more than a lot of other things in the past have been. There was torrents and Napster and all these things. Those shook the foundation of some industries, but money is sacred for governments. And this thing is, it's at the foundation of the castle with a forklift, right? Or a bulldozer starting to take chunks off. And, by the time they figure it out. So Brandon, like if Biden loses in 2 years, is his predecessor, or his successor, I should say, is he going to pick up the ball and run with it? Or because of the nature of politics, is he going to say, no matter what Biden said, it was wrong, we got to start again, and another 4-year cycle will begin? And then what? Where does it leave you, right? Bitcoin is moving all the time. I think about the privacy developments, CoinJoin and PayJoin and stuff like this. There's another one out now from Chris Belcher. I can't remember the name of the implementation. Like, how are they going to govern those things? They can't. Nancy Pelosi cannot do it. Chuck Schumer cannot do it. Mitch McConnell cannot do it. Yeah, you can't have this. Kamala Harris, on a podium there, she's vacuous. There's nothing behind what she's saying, and people realize this. If the American political class and sort of the first world liberal democratic political class want to know why people are willing to speculate in an unproven asset like Bitcoin, 5 years ago, even now, and to some extent, it's unproven. If you want to know why, the crisis in confidence is not necessarily with the money; it's with the people. That's a big issue for a lot of people my age and younger, and I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just think interesting too that you don't think that they're gonna change or anything, like, because the way we're seeing it right now, at least in the United States, is like, the old ways aren't necessarily the ways that people want to go about things, right? So we're seeing a lot of people with censorship, where one of the first, things in the Bill of Rights is freedom of speech, freedom of press, and everything like that. And you see a lot of people get canceled for saying things 5, 10 ago that maybe it's a different tune now, but they want to censor people or censor you because they have a different belief, or because they can't argue against your point, right? They realize that what they believe is not right. They can't argue against what you're saying. So their solution is to shut you up, essentially. And then there's also the right to bear arms too, that we're seeing in the United States. A lot of places, it's super difficult to get a firearm, and those are coincidentally the most gun violent ridden places in America too. So but people don't really see that. They just, guns are bad, guns kill people, and it's just a lot of thinking that they're getting farther and farther away from the American country, or United States of America was founded on. I don't think that it will change like anytime soon or anything like that, or radically. But to your point, that it's like once to 4 years, it's like what can a president really do, if anything drastic, because at the end of the day, they want to get reelected, right? So they want to make that term not 4 years but 8 years, but 8 years. And they either can screw it up really bad, or sit and do nothing. And we're kind of seeing the former, I think, in my opinion, right now. So I don't know how much the predecessor can do. And I also think another big issue too in the United States is that it's a two-party system, where
Yeah.
it's like, we get a lot of people where the last two elections, what the narrative was bad or worse. And I liked 45 as he was, but I think, like, obviously he rubbed some people the wrong way with the stuff he did on Twitter and other things like that. But people just, I guess, bought into the narrative of how bad he was and everything like that. But the economy was booming and everything like that. Prior, they thought it was time for a change, and here we are, and so we'll probably see something similar in the election where it'll be Biden again, and it'll be like the narrative will be, they need to reelect him because of all these things going on, and it's bad to have change. And I'm sure the other person will change where probably seen that campaign slow a few times. So
can already see the writing on the wall, right? The
yeah,
political whims of a nation are, they're exactly that. They're whims. And you gotta really be careful investing, planning your life around these things. They're difficult in the best of times, and now are not the best of times. So
well, I mean, it's true. When everybody kind of gets into their investing journey, whether it's stocks, real estate, whatever, they find the people that are the most successful, right? So Warren Buffett was one of the people that I found, and I kind of looked at when I first got into this, and his thing was never really care about the macro, because if you look at good companies, they're gonna fine in the long run. I think, we're getting to a point where it's like you can't ignore the macro. You can't
no.
ignore these bigger things going on because being the stock market in ways never seen before. And that, like, you have to be not only a hedge fund manager, but you also have to be knowledgeable in economics. You have to be knowledgeable on like governmental policies, all these things that how can, you know, you know, and at the end of the day, that's kind of why I started all this content stuff, because I was like, hey, I'm looking into all this stuff myself to figure it out for my own personal gain. So might as well, share else too. So all right, well, let's get into the rates, the Canadian rate hike.
So okay, yeah, Liam is in the chat saying that so obviously BOC raised a quarter point last week, and I'm of the opinion that this is not a legitimate rate. It's not that it's illegitimate, but it's not a rate hike that's going to fight inflation. We said on our show this week that a quarter point on $100,000 on your mortgage. Do you know how much that is per month per 100,000?
No, tell me.
$12.
Do you have 30 year like fixed mortgages in
you get 25-year fixed or 5, whatever, or you generally don't get 25-year. You get 5-year fixed or 3-year, 4-year fixed or variable, and the rate changes and whatever. There's like a risk there you take if you go variable. But the point is that this is not going to slow down the housing market prices. This is not going to slow down inflation. It's not going to slow down people who are overextending to buy homes and overextending to buy cars and other retail debt. I don't know what this is. And we speculated on this week's show that this is just it's a bullet to put back in the chamber so that in 6 months when they have to fire again and lower the rates, they have something to do it with. And I'm going to stick by that. I really don't think we're going to see another rate hike, maybe one more quarter point. But with the war in Europe now, like land wars are not friendly environments for rate hikes. And I don't view it as a potential outcome at all. And I think it's like just, saving face more than anything.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I feel the United States were to hike their rate in a week or so that they announced. So if the United States kind of follows suits of the Bank of Canada and raises it 25 bips, I think that it's gonna affect the stock market and bring it down. And I think both Dan and I have kind of spoke about this, that it's a midterm election here in the United States, so a midterm tank of the stock market might sway voters one way, and because of that they'll bring the rates back down to zero, and then the stock market will be as inflated as it is now. So I tend to agree. All these rate hikes more for saving face opposed to necessarily for the good of the people.
Yeah, you can't get up to a substantial number, and also the inverse of the wealth effect will really, like you mentioned, wreak havoc on election cycles, because if people feel poor, they're going to cut discretionary spending, which is going to cut growth in the economy, and you get into this negative feedback loop where you need to lower rates again anyway. So why? Like it's really like these are, I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about. These are unprecedented times. The best economists in the world don't have any idea what's coming next. We've never been here before. So I'm just like, man, maybe this is a good place to wrap it. I'm just buying Bitcoin. I'm buying Bitcoin as much as I've ever bought. And I have no fear that in 5 years, 10 years, it's going to be some of the best money I've ever spent.
I agree on the point wrap it. All right. So on that note, I am Brandon, the host of the Green Candle podcast, or the State of the Bitcoin podcast. I run the Green Candle account at Green Candle. We got the State of the Bitcoin podcast, the Twitter Spaces that we do with Joey. So if you follow me on Twitter, 4:30 p.m. Eastern every Friday. Joey's there, and we got the newsletter at Green Candle Investments. .sub.com. Just follow me on Twitter. You'll see everything else we got on. And then, Joey, Canadian Bitcoiners podcast, more underrated podcast out there. If you haven't heard it yet, you should hear it. And Joey, what do you got for us? Final words.
Let me show you how to do a sign off with the content. Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. We stream Monday nights, Wednesday nights. You can catch me Friday Spaces, and follow me on Twitter. Joey Tweets, 3 E's in the tweets. Thanks for having me on. See how quick that was?
There you go. There's a pro you can't coach. It comes from years of practice. Well, Joey, thank you so much here, and that's a wrap. Everybody in the chat, I appreciate it. We're out.
God bless.